that one.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to a Thursday Frozen 4 edition of Morning Cuppa Hockey presented by Bet365. Presented by Bet365. Oh my God, it's 6 a.m. Check out Bet365's 3-goal early payout. When your team goes up 3, you get paid. It's that simple. Download the app today. You must be 19 plus. Please pay responsibly. And we are also presented by Parasso, the most complete choice for shaving and beard care. Made in Italy since 1948, Parasso has been a staple of Italian culture and barbershops globally for 4 generations. So get 15% off at Parasso-USA.com with our promo code Hockey15 in all caps, Hockey15. This is Colby, Cohen. I'm Jonny, Lazarus. We got Mike McMahon joining any minute here to talk about the Frozen Four and the landscape of college hockey. Then we got Tyler Yaremchuk, good friend of the show, to talk about the Edmonton Oilers and their big win last night over San Jose, which probably ended San Jose's season, I would think.
Yeah, most likely.
Yeah. So it should be a fun day. We're grinding through it. It's a big day for you. You got the double broadcast today for the Frozen Four teams. We both spoke to all 4 teams yesterday. I guess I'll ask you.
Hold on. Before we do it.
Okay.
So James Hagens signed entry-level deal yesterday, starting this season. And look, I was brutally harsh on
you were harsh.
Not on James Hagens, by the way.
Yeah.
I was brutally harsh, feeling like the situation mismanaged just from his camp. Because I was like, what happens if he goes in the American League? What happens if he doesn't get NHL games this year? Now I think I have to, now that it's, I even said 2 days ago, I believe, I said now that, Boston's things have gotten so tight for them, and Providence is an opportunity to go on such a long playoff run. And the way I understand it, and we can ask Mike McMahon.
Yeah, Mike
will know the answer to this too. But I'm almost positive now Hagens can't go back and play in the American League.
I believe so. Yeah.
Now that he's on that contract,
not this year,
right? This year, yeah, this year. But it looks like he's going to play NHL games now. He got his deal. He got his feet wet. He probably, based on the way that he played, it sounds like the power play is where he was standing out, and 5-on-5 he struggled. But again, where I have to say, I was critical on the way I felt like the agent handled it. I felt like they didn't do a great job of getting him where he needed to be right away. And look, he's now there.
Well, didn't you also say last week that you said he would get a game and then you kind of walked
I thought
I
was looking at the tea leaves, right? So I was wrong. And B, it seems like it's worked out, and it's worked out for the player. It's worked out for the agent. So again,
and the Bruins need him now. It seems like kind of.
I mean, listen, I think that's a stretch to say that the Bruins need a guy who has 1 goal in his first 7 games in the American League. I think that's a little bit of a stretch.
You can help them offensively and balance.
Probably on the power play, probably. But I saw Joe Haggerty tweeting, who's been watching his games, and I listen. Joe is definitely not for everybody. I know he's a reporter that pisses a lot of people off, but he watches a lot of hockey. He's been covering the Bruins a long time, and so there's probably some validity to what he sees when he's watching him. But again, we'll see how that goes, and I never have an issue being wrong. And in this situation, it's looking like I was wrong in my criticisms for the way it was handled. So hopefully the kid gets to play a couple games now and he does well. Yeah. I mean, listen, that's always what you'd like to see. So I wanted to start there before we go into the, before we talk to Mike McMahon, before we talk to.
And make it clear that you're very happy that he signed. I know,
I was wanting for the player to make sure he was looked at as an NHLer, not as an AHLer. My worry was he goes to the AHL, he doesn't look like an NHLer. And when you do that in the NHL, that's okay. You're supposed to not look like an NHLer right away. Not many guys do what Porter Martone's doing. I almost wonder if the pressure that maybe Boston felt from Porter Martone being up and having success, it is a cop. I wonder if that. But this could have just been the plan all along, and we just didn't know. I mean, it could have, maybe this was okay, on this date, we're going to go this direct. So,
well, they also weren't comfortable in the playoffs. They wanted to maybe let James get his feet wet without the pressure of helping Boston secure their spot in the playoffs. This way he can go to the AHL, no pressure on him on the ATO. And then once he's comfortable, finds his footing, and they have a little bit of room for safety in the playoffs, then they call him up. It makes sense.
Yeah. Listen, hopefully he'll never play another game in Providence.
Yeah.
That's the hope, right? That's always the hope for me, is that you'll never play another game in Providence. And listen, I'm not someone who thinks the American League is the best development league for a hockey player. Mm-hmm. I'm not. I actually think if we wanted to really, really get honest with ourselves and look at the American League, I'm not sure it's the best place to develop. Some guys need it. Most players actually need it. They need because of the hockey. But, I don't know how you can call the American League a development league when guys are playing 3 games in 3 days. And I know that's gotten more and more limited over the years. Mm-hmm. There's too many games in the American League. There's no need to play 76 games, right?
Those guys even work
most guys need – no, when are you strength training? When are you strength training? Most of the players in the American League are guys that still need strength and conditioning. Yeah. Why not go to 65 games, right? Almost a full NHL season. And, really lay in and really lean into strength and conditioning and nutrition. Mm-hmm. Those are 2 of the most important things that now every kid is talking about, American League kid, right? True. Yeah. When you play a game in a smaller city and after the game, the food is pizza, right? For the bus ride home, that's not developed. No. That's not development. So I could go on all day about where I think the American League is more of a business than a development league. And I think there's a lot of people, scouts in the National Hockey League that actually subscribe to that. Probably more American scouts than Canadian scouts. But one of the things I want to ask Mike about is some of these new rules that will actually affect the American League. It will affect the NCAA, mm-hmm. It will affect the CHL,
it's going to affect the NHL,
everywhere with this new potentially 5 years to compete, mm-hmm. no matter what, as your clock starts at 18. There's a lot of shit going on right now that I really do want to talk to Mike about.
So let's bring Mike on, work him into the conversation. Mike McMahon, honestly, probably one of our favorite college hockey brains. We always talk about your work, Mike. Seriously, not just gassing you up because you're on our show. Is this Christmas morning for you?
It feels that way, doesn't it? Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
It's awesome. The best week of the year for a number of reasons, but the fact that we get to watch these 4 teams tonight is pretty exciting.
Yeah. Before we kind of talk Frozen Four, we were talking about Hagens and the whole situation. You watched him a lot this year, right? I mean, you're dialed on Hockey East like nobody else is. And, do you think he's ready to help the Boston Bruins right now? Do you agree with this, the way this whole thing has gone and been handled with getting his feet wet? Now he can't play the American League playoffs, right? Which I'm very happy for him that he can just play in the NHL playoffs, hopefully, right? But what do you think of the whole situation, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, just from where I am, I saw Hagens a lot. I also watched the Bruins quite a bit, as you can tell by the jersey hanging behind me here. But can he help them? I mean, it's all relative, I think, on how much he can help them. I think, as you guys were saying, he could probably help them in the power play. I don't know that he's going to help them much 5-on-5, at least not yet at this age and where he's at from a strength standpoint. That's one of the things that every player his age needs to improve on, right? So I think he'll help them on the power play. I think he'll make them a little bit deeper. He definitely has more skill than some of the guys in their bottom 6, but in a playoff series, is he going to play the way that they are going to need their bottom 6 forwards to play? I don't know if he's going to bring that type of game just yet. To me, if you're using James Hagens at the NHL level in the playoffs, you either need him to be able to play in your top 6, or you're probably not going to want to play him in a playoff game because it gets a little different. So I'm interested to see, because they got 4 or 5 games left here, whatever it is.
I think 3. I think just 3.
Is it just 3? So I'm interested in seeing, what does it look like? How do they deploy him? Who's he playing with 5-on-5? And I'm assuming he's going to be on the power play, which is really where I think he'll be able to help him the most.
Yeah, and I don't know if you caught that clip yesterday. It's actually, I just got it sent to me right now. I think it's from Felger and Maz or whatever.
Oh my God, I saw that.
Is the pressure on James there right now? But or are, I mean, at least the knowledgeable Bruins fans okay,
that was the dumbest clip ever. Tell people what was in that didn't see.
I just had it sent to me literally by a friend. I mean, I heard
that.
What it was about.
What's that guy's name again? Is that Felger?
Felger.
Mike Felger. Yeah.
He's I've never watched 1 second of James Hagens, but I can tell you he's gonna suck. Yeah. I'm that. You just told everyone you're an idiot and you don't watch and then you comment. So
a year ago at this time. The same show a year ago at this time?
No, this is yesterday.
No, I know, but I'm saying a year ago, right around this time a year ago, the same exact show was saying things like, I've never seen Dean Letourneau play, but what a bust pick. And it's he probably wasn't ready to go to college yet. He didn't score a single goal in Hockey East. Well, because he probably should have played in the USHL first. But it was just like that. That was their take a year ago. That's kind of quieted down because Letourneau's had a nice year for himself. But same show, same people a year ago were telling everybody without having ever seen Dean Letourneau play that he was a bust.
So. Well, like that comment aside, though, I wanted to ask about kind of like the theme around it, right? Like, is there going to be this loud noise on James? Because it seems like Boston fans are kind of like have accepted the patience with him almost because of the way that the situation was handled. Yeah, I mean,
I don't feel like there's going to be a ton of pressure there. There's going to be some outside noise from talk shows like that, and maybe some from some writers, but for the most part, I think everybody knows what the situation is. And he's a first-round pick. He's a top 10 pick, but he's not the first overall pick, right? He's not coming in here in October and people are expecting him to be a savior. I think just people want to see him look good. I think there's a difference between being the number one overall pick and hey, we're all of our hope is on you to the situation he's in where it's like, hey, you know what? We think you can help us, but really we're not leaning on you. Like we're leaning on Geeky. We're leaning on Pasternak. We're leaning on Zappa. Like those are the guys that we're going to lean on.
It's not like Martone where I do think they're looking for a savior.
Yeah.
It really isn't. Some of the shine on Michkov sort of wore off, but he is playing better. And in a way, I think Martone takes some pressure off him, takes some light off him. But then I also think it provides healthy competition. He's sitting there like, well, wait a sec, I want to be, so I think the one good thing you can always say about the Bruins is like their locker room and their leadership and their culture is been in a good way for a long time. So, Mike, before we again dive into the Frozen Four, there has been some NCAA news swirling since the president decided to weigh in on this whole thing and. Hey, I'm just going to make an executive order about college sports. And I know he's got Nick Saban in his ear, and I know he's got all these other people in his ear. And, I look at what he did, and I'm like, it's one of those where I'm like, dude, stay in your lane, because it screams we don't really truly understand. And I put Congress in there, all the people that are trying to kind of swoop in here now and put, in my opinion, Band-Aids on bullet holes. You know what I mean? And you're solving one problem and creating 7 new problems just to pretend like you had a win with college sports. And I just don't think that that's the answer to what we have going on. So, Mike, maybe you could explain and talk a little bit about this new, 5 years of eligibility that, again, it hasn't been approved. So they still need to vote on it.
Next
and I know,
week, right?
And I know you'll talk about that, Mike, but you could just explain to everyone, like, what does this mean? And what if hockey will be greatly affected and every level will be greatly affected by this, Mike?
I don't understand every sport as much as I understand hockey, right? I don't know the intricacies of college wrestling or softball or anything like that. But I have to imagine because of the junior hockey element, hockey is going to be impacted by this more than any other sport collegiately. I guess I'll start with why they're doing it or why it's even being entertained, because they started talking about this about a year ago and then tabled it, just giving kids 5 years of eligibility across the board. At that point in time, like last year, they hadn't at that point put a start date on it. They were just saying that you would have 5 years of eligibility. And the reason why they wanted to go in that direction from the NCAA standpoint was they kept getting sued about denying waivers. So a kid would miss a year for injury or miss half a year for injury, maybe not meet the threshold for a medical red shirt. He would apply for one anyway. The NCAA would deny it, and then they would get sued over that denial. I think it was, I don't know the number off the top of my head, but it was close to 100. Like in the last year, they've had 100 different cases where they denied a waiver for a 5th year and then were brought to court over that waiver denial. So from the way I understand it, from an NCAA standpoint, they look at this as a better legal framework for them, where now they just get rid of waivers completely. Everyone has 5 years. There are no red shirts. There are no waivers. They're looking at it as a way to close a loophole and prevent eligibility lawsuits by just not having any medical. Like, there's nothing to deny. We are just not going to have waivers. Everyone is going to have a 5-year window. and it's going to start at either high school graduation or their 19th birthday, whichever comes first.
Right.
And that's where, from a hockey standpoint, right, it gets a little tricky. It gets a little messy because right now players can play juniors until they're 20, and no other sport has that. No other sport has a place where these kids can go play until they're 20 years old. A lot of athletes now reclass. I mean, you guys know that. I'm looking at that right now. I have a 13-year-old, and like half the kids in his team this year, they're all going into high school next year. Half the kids in his team are repeating their 8th grade year before they go to high school. Like, they're doing this at 13 years old.
Well, yeah, because it's going to help them be in the NHL one day, obviously.
100%. So, like, that's becoming more and more prominent, though, of kids repeating a year. And I think this would just create a situation where more kids are going to do that. Because, yeah, I mean, everyone talks about Gavin McKenna and Macklin Celebrini and Verhoff and these guys that come into school at 17 and play their draft year. But look at the total number of kids that play college hockey. We're talking about 0.5% of kids that actually do that, if that. I think the vast majority of kids are going to want to have that development window open for as long as possible, which means getting to their 19th birthday before their clock will start, which means at some point repeating a year of high school. So that's one of the things it'll create, but it's going to have a ripple effect everywhere. Like junior hockey, we've already talked about junior hockey getting younger because of the CHL rule and schools being able to pull guys in at 18 or 19. Some guys still come in are going to age out and come in at 20. Well, if you take that away and now schools, to preserve a 5-year eligibility clock, want that kid in there by 19, again, it's a trickle down, and now junior hockey is going to continue to get younger. Maybe 19 is the cap. I think players, the one thing that reading through the proposal that isn't really clear is what happens if a player does age out of juniors and come in at 20. I think my understanding is that
Mike,
they would
it's
still
not
have
just
4 years.
It's not just 20 though. Like, I mean, I have players on my team that are turning 21 during the season.
I turned 21 my freshman year.
They're like, I have players on my junior team that are 05 birth years that are going to college next year, and they're entering college as 21-year-olds.
Well, can I say something quick just about this whole thing too? And we were talking about this yesterday with Steve Dubinsky, the father of Aiden Dubinsky and Zach Dubinsky. Unreal guy, played in the NHL, played at Clarkson, really knowledgeable in the youth hockey landscape.
Yeah.
And the conversation that we were having was, it feels like a lot of these conversations about, the change in college hockey and this rule and the way that we're headed, that they want to eliminate the late bloomers, right? Like, I was a guy who played in the North American League for 2 years when I was 19 and 20. And I ended up, I got lucky. I went to UMass, but then I ended up at Mercyhurst and played in the Atlantic. And, people are talking about like,
have you bloomed yet?
No,
you're an extreme case, Johnny. I don't think you've bloomed yet, if we're being honest.
I kind of fucking teed myself up for that one. But you get what I mean? Like, it seems like all the conversations, like, think about all the guys that like find their footing in their second year junior at 20. Like, I look at a kid like Logan Rinkowski in the USHL right now, 40 plus goals, going to Vermont next year. Like a kid who, I think stumbled in a couple places early on in his younger parts of his career. You coached him in Jersey, and then he, goes through.
Listen, I don't think that was like, once he was a junior player, I think it was just about getting him an opportunity because I watched this kid every day, and he was committed to Harvard, and they backed away from him. And I remember saying to those guys, and, it probably hurt him that Matt Gilroy was one of his coaches, because I feel like if I told Matt a player was good, he was like, forget that player. I'm not the biggest fan of me, which I've talked about on the show before. But I would watch what this kid could do every day, and I'd be like, he just needs an opportunity. I mean, listen, am I surprised he's leading the USHL in goals or scoring? I mean, maybe he's second. He's second. Yeah. He's fourth. I'm not surprised at that when I think about like how hard he could shoot the puck. I mean, last year our power play, it didn't go to shit, but it suffered when he left us for the USHL. But my job is to get guys to the USHL. Yeah. I mean, that is the number one most important thing in our league that we can do, is get players to get them out to the next level as quick as possible. Yeah. And even I, a lot of times, have guys come to me and say, hey, like, should I do one more year at junior, or should I take this offer at Trinity or one of the NESCAC schools? And I tell them, like, go to college.
Yeah.
Like,
he's a perfect example.
Start your life. Go to college, know? But Mike, so with this rule, what is it like now? Does this change things for the American League, for the NHL? Like, because now all of a sudden you're not going to be signing a 25-year-old free agent anymore, because the guys, I mean, I guess you'd be done at 23 no matter what now in college hockey, or is my math off? Is it 24 that you'd have to be done by?
You could be done by 24 if you enter at 19 because you'd have 5 years. The question becomes like, how many players are going to use all 5 years, right? Because for me, like most guys are going to
use one. Yeah.
So
would Owen Murray. Owen Murray of UMass, the captain of UMass, is like dying to know if he's eligible to go back.
You're screaming, but
no, I mean I'm sure some guys would, but like the guys that get offers or that are going to get an NHL contract offer after 3 years, after 4 years, I got to imagine they're still going to want to take those. But at the same time, like it does put a cap on certain players. Like, right, they got to get out. If you start at 19, you're going to be out by the time you're 24. Now, what does that do? I agree. What does that do to the American League? Because everything is still kind of settling just from last year. The fact that all these CHL players can go to school now and they don't have to rush those guys into the American League or lose their rights. So the dust hasn't even settled from that change yet. And here comes potentially another one that, there's always unintended consequences, and we really don't know what they're going to be until we kind of see it implemented. But it does feel like it would impact the American League. It would impact really every level of hockey.
Yeah, there would be a huge domino effect here. There really would, and I wonder again, I wonder how much Bill Daly's whispering to the different college commissioners. I mean, yesterday saw all the college commissioners meeting from every conference. Mm-hmm. They were having a meeting at Starbucks. The Glenn was there. The commissioner of the USHL. It was definitely a thinking group type of meeting. USA Hockey was there. I saw Pat Kelleher.
He came out to me. He was like, "What's up, John?"
Yeah, he's calling me John too. I love that. Yeah, Chris Kelleher, man, he comes after you harder than anyone. So I love that he's got his brother in on it. Yeah. Mike, let me ask you one more thing here with this whole new landscape thing, because I'm here at the regionals and I'm studying these rosters, and I mean, most of these rosters are still comprised of USHL and national team development players. I mean, you look at the success of the regionals and where the goals came from, it is overwhelmingly from players that played in the USHL. Overwhelmingly. I'm talking 80+% of the goals on college teams from regionals came from players that came out of the USHL versus the CHL. Now, granted, we expect more CHL players are going to be coming, mm-hmm. and so maybe those numbers are going to change a little bit. But what would you say your analysis would be on this first year of this bigger player pool that we have? Would you call it an overwhelming success that players have made the jump from the O, the Q, the dub? Because I feel like we talk a lot about it, but then when you really look at the way the players kind of shook this year, obviously there's the exceptions to the rule. Gavin McKenna had a ton of points this year. Martone was great for his team. But you look at Keaton Verhoff, who's a really good player. I mean, Keaton's playing 16 and a half minutes a night and playing on the third pair right now. Yeah. And listen, next year, I think he'll play 27 minutes a night. I think the kid's really good. And I think Dane Jackson's probably loyal to some of the upperclassmen that decided to come back and stick with him. But I would be curious, Mike, how you would assess year one of the new world order and or the new player pool is kind of how I would describe it.
Yeah, I think it's largely player dependent, as most of these things are, right? I don't think you could blanketly say it was good, it was bad. It was player to player. From what I saw, the overarching effects was it did make everybody a little bit deeper. And I think that's why.
Which is great, by the way. I that makes me happy. I like that.
That's the way I was describing it. I think really, even from the middle of the year, was everybody's floor is a little bit higher than it was before, which means that's why I think you saw so much more competition in pair. That's why Wisconsin as a 3 seed is in the Frozen Four. I mean, there's all these teams, and not all of them exclusively because of CHL players, but I mean it increased everybody's floor because there's more talented, regardless of where they came from. There's more talented players available. That's why I think. I was talking to a coach earlier this year who was advocating for expanding the tournament, and his argument was,
I'm for that too.
We are the one sport where anyone in the top 20 or even the top 24, you feel like realistically has a chance?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, for the most part, I was saying this, Mike, that
13.
I think, my opinion, the true number is like 13 of the or 14 teams, in my opinion, here, I could make a really strong argument for, and you guys know how I love to argue, to win. I always think there's one or two that sort of got here maybe on a whatever. Like I don't want to put anyone down. I don't want to put anyone down here. But I truly believe 13 to 14 teams that come to this tournament every year, you can make a really strong case for.
Yeah.
So do I, 100%. And that's where I think in terms of like which players from the new pool, let's call it the CHL pool, made the biggest impact from what I saw, watching again, a lot of Eastern games, a lot of ECAC games, a lot of Hockey East games, but obviously I'm watching a lot of Western games on TV every night when I get home. The ones that had the biggest impact to me were, no surprise, the ones that were physically ready to do so, right? The ones that were physically mature enough. You look at just the size of guys. Some of the defensemen that came in that were already 6'2" and 200 pounds, like they adapted a little bit quicker than the guys that needed to spend more time in the weight room. And I think you saw those guys get better as the year went on. But for me, I think the guys that were a little more physically mature, which really shouldn't surprise people, like those were the guys that came in and made the biggest impacts early. And that's true, I think, no matter where you're coming from, whether it's the CHL or the USHL. If you come in and you're from a strength and conditioning standpoint, you might be 19 years old or 20 years old, but you're built like a man, you're going to have a much easier time playing against 24-year-olds than a guy that needs to spend a year in the weight room.
That was me. I was 20 and I was still not developed physically. Not that I am now, like we were joking before, but it is a different ball game when you first step into a college hockey game. Like it really is. And it's so hard to describe to someone who's actually just like never made the jump from junior to college. Like I hear players all the time, and I was asking someone recently about their jump from college to the NHL, and they all say that's easier than the jump from junior to college. Like they all say because they're physically just there with NHL guys versus when they're or where they're at physically in junior versus getting to college. It's just wild to hear all these people like compare the jump from junior to college versus college to the pros.
I was lucky because I did it at such a young age, but I was big. I was already 6'3". Yeah. I mean, I weighed 160 pounds.
You're so like deceivingly big.
I was and I did it at 15, but it was in Ontario. Yeah. Like I played in that Ontario Provincial Junior League, the league under the OHL. And so I was able to kind of get a year of it under my belt, like very stress-free. Mm-hmm. And then it was with the national team. Obviously we played in the North American League, and then the next year team we played college teams, right? So I was kind of lucky to get exposed early, and it helped me. And let me just be clear here on my position. Like I've said this all along, and you all know, like I will fiercely defend the USHL because I think the product is so much better than people realize. I just do. Like you look at the success players have leaving the USHL and coming to college hockey. I think the CHL is great hockey. Yeah. My criticisms on the CHL are with leadership.
How they handle the play.
It's with leadership. Yeah. It's with commissioners and it's with general managers. That's my issue. Mm-hmm. The players and the level of hockey. I mean, I think making a kid to sign future at 15 years old is criminal. Yeah. So I'm totally in support of this. Just so people are clear, because everyone's like, you hate the CHL. It's like, no, I hate the people who run the CHL. I think those people are total douchebags, and they're totally self-serving. And I just don't have time for that. I really don't. I work in junior hockey, and there's some really good people too. There's some really good coaches. There's some really good GMs. There are some good owners in that league. I have a friend that owns a team in that league, and he doesn't care about money whatsoever. He just wants to provide a great environment for his players, and that's the guys in Guelph. That's Scotty Walker and his business partner. And like, I don't know if he would ever want to be named, because I know Scotty Walker's the front man as the owner, but I like those people care about developing hockey players. They don't care about the money. They're not in it for the money. And that I think is great. So
I want to ask Mike a question based off that though. Cause I don't know if we'll ever get to this point. Like sometimes I feel like we're heading this direction. Sometimes I feel like it's completely the opposite, but will we get to a place where players are being drafted out of college like we do see in football and in the NBA? Obviously, those players have to declare for it, so it's kind of different in that sense. But with the direction of the USHL, of the CHL, is it almost going to be like, let's just try to get all of our guys to college and then let the NHL teams draft it from there? like every player is going to be playing their draft year in college hockey from what it's looking like.
Not
for
every player.
For the most
That's
part, though, that's what it's looking like.
I don't agree with
that.
That's
the direction that they want to head in.
I don't agree with that.
It's interesting. Like that's an NHL question, and it does. I've heard there's been some push towards that. Well, not necessarily making it a college draft, but to pushing the draft year to 19 or 20. Right?
That I would support. That I fully support.
That's what I think it makes more sense. So then you're kind of doing it by proxy, like you're making it a college draft by just making the draft age older. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure the CHL teams are not going to like that because right now you get a player drafted out of CHL. They're getting development money from the NHL for those guys. Like, there's going to be some serious pushback there. But there has been some talk.
You have a lot of guys that play their draft year in junior hockey at that point because they want to make sure they have big numbers.
Yeah,
because numbers are easier to come by in juniors. I mean, that doesn't take a genius to figure that out, right? And so, look, I think there's some areas that I think the league can improve and. I know, like talking to some of the coaches yesterday, Mike, I think there's a lot of good momentum to maybe trying to add a few games to the schedule. A lot of coaches are talking. If they could get 4 more, they'd be really happy. 6, they'll
35 right now.
It's around 35. They're all trying to push it closer to 40.
Yeah. 34 is the cap right now with some exceptions. So
right.
if you play an Alaska team in Alaska, those don't count towards your 34. Because they're trying to
like a Christmas probably, right?
Christmas tournaments, I don't think count. There's certain things that you're allowed to exempt, but only like once out of every 4 years or something. But they're hard. The cap is 34.
Well, that and like some of the rules about coaches not being able to work on the ice with their players in the off season, which is ridiculous. Like that's just crazy, ridiculous type of stuff. All right, Mike, let's just couple minutes here. We'll go quickly here with the Frozen Four since we just spent 30 minutes not
avoiding it.
Yeah, not talking about what we thought we would talk about. We're here at the Frozen Four. We've got the 4 big blue bloods, most championships, old rivalries. Is there a couple of players here, Mike, that you could just highlight to our audience, whether they're prospects of NHL teams, whether they're free agents, guys that like you look at and think, hey, if you're going to watch college and you don't watch a ton of college hockey, like make sure you have your eye on these couple of guys.
Yeah, I think you can start with almost everybody on that Michigan roster, right? That's first and foremost. But I think there's a couple of guys this weekend that are real big keys to their team just in terms of how they play. And they're not really heralded guys. Like the guys with big numbers, I think, are easy to pick out. Obviously, people are going to say, watch Cole Reshny, watch Keaton Verhoff, watch, TJ Hughes, like all the big name players. I look at some guys that I think are going to be key to their team success, like North Dakota. I think Abram Wiebe is a big part of what they do defensively, and he's going to need to be really good this weekend for them to have success. I think same about their goaltender. Like Spunar was up and down coming down the stretch for North Dakota this year. And I know Dane Jackson said during regionals, he didn't put as much of that on the goaltender as much as he put it on how the team was playing in front of him down the stretch. But he locked it in regionals. I mean, he didn't allow a goal. He hasn't allowed a goal in the NCAA tournament yet and was lights out. So I think those two guys are absolute keys for their team. And I even look at Wisconsin and look at some of their senior guys that Mike Hastings brought over with him from Minnesota State. Fitzgerald, Simon Tassi, guys where you're like, just kind of are old school college hockey players in terms of how they play, but also in terms of their path and how they got here. So it's a mix. You get some high-end prospects too, and everybody knows about those guys. But I love those guys that kind of play not a behind-the-scenes role, but play an important role, but one that isn't necessarily as noticeable to someone that's just looking at a box score and going, oh, that guy had 3 points tonight,
One guy I wanted to highlight too and ask you, I'm curious on your thoughts on the Hobie, but Jake Livanovich, who I actually think I just said his last name right for the first time all weekend. I was practicing it like literally 50 times yesterday. And when I interviewed him, I still fucked it up. But he's a guy I heard like one of those maybe lower key guys played in the Spangler Cup this year that might actually be playing in the NHL or signing in the NHL as soon as their season ends. He's another low key guy for Sioux Falls, for the Fighting Hawks. I am a mess this morning. But, Mike, your take on the Hobie Baker tomorrow, the 3 finalists, TJ Hughes, Max Plant, and Eric Polkamp. That is tomorrow night. Who do you think comes home with the Hobie Baker this year?
3 excellent players, right? And I feel like usually when we go into that Friday at the Frozen Four, You got 3 finalists, but you kind of know, like, hey, this guy's the favorite. I don't know that there's really a favorite here, because I think you could, like, just what we talked about earlier, you could make a case for 13 teams to win the tournament. You can make a case for all 3 of these guys to win the Hobie. If it were me, I'd go with Max Plant. I just think he's the most complete player I've seen this year. I mean, so dynamic with the puck, but then you watch his game off the puck too. He is, and you look at how Minnesota Duluth deploys him. He plays in every situation. He's on their top power play. He's on their top penalty kill. Obviously, he's on their top line. He's one of their best 5-on-5 players, but he's at another level. And it's hard for me to argue against Eric Polkamp because I've been so impressed with what he's done. Scoring the number of goals he scored as a defenseman in college is not easy, but Plant is just, to me, he's on another level. If it were me, I'd go Max Plant.
Yeah.
Do you have any inside info for our Detroit Red Wings people that are here and in the chat? Do you believe that he will be returning to school, or do you believe that he will be signing an NHL contract?
So it's the fact that he hasn't signed yet leads me to believe that there's a chance he still goes back to school. Because I mean,
the talks around Vegas are that he will.
I'm told, and I'm hearing that he is coming back.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah,
and the one kicker there that a lot of people aren't talking about is he plays with his brother,
and Victor's coming,
and there's another brother that's going to be a freshman. So when is he ever going to get an opportunity to play with both of his brothers again? And don't be shocked if, like, opening night next year, it's not 3 Plant brothers on a line together. I would not, somebody might have whispered that in my ear that has a lot of say over the lineup card that I walked around with yesterday in Minnesota Duluth. And we've had Scott Sandelin on our show before. I mean, he's such a great salt of the earth guy. So,
and I think Larry Keenan's going back too. So, like, 2 big Detroit prospects that are going back to college for the most part.
Eric Polkamp brought him up in our meeting yesterday. Yeah? Brought up Larry Keenan. Did they play together at Spangler Cup?
Yeah, they did.
He was
how much of a beauty is Eric Polkamp?
San Jose fans are going to love
him. He's hilarious.
But he brought him up yesterday unprompted. Your boy Larry Keenan. I knew you'd like that. So, Mike, like I said to you, the Frozen Four not the same without you. I think they should have delayed it, but it is what it is. You'll be watching, and you'll let me know how it sounds. All right.
Will do. Enjoy it.
Thanks, Mike. Alrighty, now we got friend of the show, Tyler Yaremchuk, waiting for us. We got to talk about the Edmonton Oilers and Connor McDavid's performance last night. Before we bring on Tyler, a quick word from our sponsor, JP Weisers. No matter where your team sits this season, watching the game with your crew makes everything better. The wins feel bigger and the rivalries hit harder. As the official whiskey of the NHL, JP Weisers is all about those moments that matter. From October through June, the rituals, the midweek matchups, and the regional rivalries that bring friends together. Because when you get the crew together for a game night, that's a W. This season, fans can look forward to limited edition products and plenty more from JP Weisers. So to stay up to date, visit jpweisers.com and subscribe to the JP Weisers newsletter for the latest on limited edition drops, products, and more. You must be legal drinking age. Please enjoy it responsibly. And with that, let's bring on our friend, Tyler Yaremchuk. And Tyler, first question for you. How are the Oilers going to get out of the first round this year if they do not play the LA Kings?
Oh, first off, sorry to hear about your guys' hotel room. I know they messed up and only gave you guys 1 bed, so you've been sharing. So I know that's been tough. Hope you guys are still getting
good one, Ty.
We're not traveling with daily Faceoff, so our travel accommodations are a little stronger than that.
Damn, kid, that's actually kind of a good one. How are they going to get out of the first round? Everyone in their division is junk. My biggest fear is that they win the division and have to play Utah, and that's actually a mildly difficult matchup. So it'll be fine. I mean, last night, San Jose, that kind of was a good game to watch and go like, all right, yeah, even though the Pacific Division is not that good, there are still contenders and pretenders in that division. And San Jose,
Tyler,
I think, unfortunately, is a bit of a pretender.
Yeah, I think Connor McDavid gave Macklin Celebrini a little of this last night. Yeah. Like, okay, kid, like, take it easy here. Although Macklin scored, Connor's
goal is ridiculous.
He did. I mean, the points raised and, like, the heart. I mean, it's just kind of getting a little bit ridiculous and out of control. So I think that's something everybody's now just assuming. But let me ask you this, Tyler. Why was everybody up in uproar over that clip of Stan Bowman and the war room in Edmonton during the trade deadline? Like, I watched that and I was like, why is everybody freaking out about this? This is like a heavily edited version, like, of like a 15 seconds of probably like 4 hours of conversation. Like, Why was the reaction so ridiculous, Tyler?
Because people like freaking out about stuff like that. People look for reasons to dislike Stan Bowman. And listen, that's not me saying I won't criticize Stan Bowman. I have this year. I've criticized him pretty heavily for the Tristan Jarry trade. But when you look at that clip, the things that kind of got people riled up was at the beginning when he kind of goes, when he's like, they're not going to get a first-round pick, so this is how we get their attention. And everyone's like, well, if you knew they weren't going to get a first-round pick, why would you give them a first-round pick? And it's like, well, because you needed them to keep 50% of the money, which not every team would have needed them to do, and you needed them to take Andrew Mangiapane. So if you weren't going to give Chicago a first-round pick in this deal, Chicago's just going to say, all right, we'll just trade Jason Dickinson to Colorado and get a second, or we'll trade him to Dallas and get a second. Like, the Oilers needed to make a strong offer to get the guy because of everything they needed Chicago to do. So, like, I'm with you. I don't understand why people are freaking out. And yeah, I think you kind of nailed it. There's not much more for me to say than, like, it's a clip. It's a 2-minute clip of what I'm sure is a 3-4 week process. I'm sure they didn't just wake up, roll into a meeting and be like, hey, do you guys want to get Colton Dock thrown in this deal? Yeah, he's got 91 hits or 191 hits. Yeah, let's trade for him. Like, that's not how NHL teams operate, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, look, and I think the thing that I took away from it was, do people hear when Stan said, we're not playing fantasy hockey. Yeah. You're building a team. Yeah. I mean, if the Olympics taught us anything, it's that you got to have players with roles. I mean, we're here at the Frozen Four, and I'll be honest with you, like, I think this year is more interesting than others because you don't have a team that has 5. The last Michigan team that came here to the Frozen Four, they had like 4 or 5 first-round picks, and they were all top 5. Yeah. The Kent Johnson, I mean, and then they had a bunch of seconds, and then, like, talking to some of the coaches yesterday, the guys were kind of they were talking about how, like, now more than ever, it's so important, like. They balance. Coaches kept referencing the Florida Panthers last night, which I'm sure doesn't make Tyler happy, but yesterday, but it is what it is. Like, everyone looks at Florida and they're just like, look how they were built with their size, with their depth, with the fact that, like, everybody had a role. You knew in what moments of the game, what players would need. And so teams are sort of all trying to replicate that, even at the college level. And so I don't know, like, I just didn't. I tried to do one of those, like, Grok, explain to me why everybody is freaking out about this clip, and it didn't answer me, or I forgot to check, one or the other. But I just thought that was a little bit absurd, Tyler, that happened, and people were freaking out like they were.
Yeah, I mean, Twitter's also Twitter, so you're going to get a lot of that. But I still think, and I said this at the deadline, like, fit over flair. And that's what Bowman was talking about when he said we're not building a fantasy hockey team. And listen, we got to wait and see what's wrong with Jason Dickinson. He went down last night, and it didn't look good. So hopefully that's not, like, a long-term thing that actually takes him out. Connor Ingram left the game after the second period, like, on top of Draisaitl and Hyman not being there. Like, the one legit concern I have right now with this team is that, like, they are not healthy, and there's never a guarantee that you get back to fully healthy. So there's 10 days until they likely open their playoffs on Sunday the 19th. Like, priority number one, as much as I would love to see the Oilers win a division for the first time in my life, it's the longest drought in the NHL, by the way, amongst teams who've done it before. I'd love to see them win the division, but priority one for this team is getting healthy.
I thought, like, didn't I ask you that in the beginning of the year about the division thing? Or actually, that might have been a question we asked Calvin Pickard in the summer about the division, if that was, like, what was motivating them. Either way, side topic. But Tyler, what have you made of a guy like Jack Roslovic? Obviously he came in a little bit late into the season. I think his role is elevated, like you said, with guys being hurt. Last night he had a big game, but he's one of those guys who, like, can blend in on the first line, probably a better fit in, like, your middle six. But the Oilers need him to be more elevated than I think what he's been in the past.
Yeah, he's been a really interesting player. Like, he signed on opening day. I was standing at a urinal at the first game of the year at Rogers Place and checked my phone and went, oh shit, they signed Jack Roslovic. So anyways, that has nothing to do with anything. But yeah, he's come in and scored 20 goals without playing on the Oilers' top power play unit. I know he's there now because of, again, injuries, but, like, this is a guy who's been very productive without needing to have power play time, without, quite frankly, needing to play with one of Connor or Leon for stretches this year. Like, he is what they wanted Jeff Skinner to be. He is what they wanted Victor Arvidsson to be, all of this stuff. So he's been really, really good. And to your point, like the versatility of him, where he's skilled enough where if you need him up with Connor, or when Leon comes back, him and Leon have played really, really good together. Him and Connor maybe not so much of a natural fit when they've had games together this year, but he can do that. If you want to play him on a third line, like, I wouldn't be surprised if they have a third line that's centered around him and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins come playoff time. Like, I do think a guy like Roslovic gives them the ability to really lengthen out their lineup. They don't have to kind of go with a traditional first line, second line, third line, fourth line. I think they can honestly go with like their top six with Connor on one line, Leon on one line. Then I think they can go with a bottom six that's like almost 2 third lines, one of which may be more defensively responsible with a Dickinson and maybe a Podkolzin on his wing or something like that, or Frederick, and then another third line, we'll call it, that can push the pace offensively a bit more with a Nugent Hopkins and a Roslovic and whoever else you want to slot there. So he lengthens their lineup. $1.5 million this year. That's an absolute bargain for the amount of production he's given them. And now the question is, is he a guy who's going to stick around past this year? Are they going to find a way to make a contract work? Or are they just going to kind of shake hands and say, hey, you delivered for us, and now you're going to get to go sign a 5x5 somewhere in the summer, and away you go. Thanks for doing business.
Let me ask you about the coaching situation in Edmonton. I mean, they're obviously playing better and they're winning games right now, and they're starting to look like they're gearing up for a decent playoff run. But we've seen, and this is not an apples to apples situation. I forget the guy's name who got fired in St. Louis when Jim Montgomery became available.
Drew Bannister.
Yeah. And so I want to know, Tyler, with Bruce Cassidy sitting out there and me thinking about Connor McDavid and his hunger to win a Stanley Cup, and the fact that Connor McDavid doesn't really have to worry who the coach is, just from no coach is going to be barking in Connor McDavid's ear. But you have a guy out there like Bruce Cassidy who, for a short window of time can really help a team get better. Mm-hmm. I mean, we've seen him do it. And when you think about some of the areas that I think Edmonton has lacked, especially in the regular season, obviously they've been a pretty damn good team down the stretch the last couple of years, and a playoff team the last couple of years. But if I was Connor McDavid, I'd be knocking on the door and being like, we need to go get Bruce Cassidy. Nothing against Knobloch. I just feel like, with his urgency to win, a guy is sitting out there. I would have really said that maybe the same thing about Pete DeBoer. I just would have thought maybe Knobloch, with the whole weirdness between Coffey and Knobloch, and I don't think that that's overstated, by the way. I think some of the talk about how Coffey's the owner's guy and Knobloch is potentially not at this moment, and then maybe there's even a little, Jeff Jackson's kind of on an island about this, and you just hear different things, and they're from people that are, they're sourced inside of Edmonton, and I just wondered, would they do something like that, or would they say, you know what, you're a good coach, but we're going to get a better coach? Well, is there any conversation about that, Tyler? Do you think that's absurd? I mean, where would an Edmonton fan sit in that regard?
There's been some comments this year that have been really interesting. You can actually go back to the end of the Cup final last year. McDavid, after Game 6 when they lost, kind of had a line of something like, we just kept beating our head against the wall, because he was asked, why couldn't you handle Florida's forecheck? And he said, yeah, we're beating our head against a wall. He said, we kept doing the same thing over and over again, and it didn't work. And everyone was kind of like, ooh, that's a weird kind of comment. But at the time, you're like, he's frustrated. They just lost the Stanley Cup again, whatever. And then Leon had that line before the Olympics, where he said, everyone's got to be better, starts with the coaching staff. And it's you don't really often hear a star player, because they're the only ones that can do it, kind of go and call out the coaching staff like that. The first thing he said right after we all need to be better was, it starts with the coaching staff. So that was kind of all right, that's a little interesting. And then Connor McDavid in the game against after the game against Tampa Bay, when he was asked about why can't the Oilers play a structure as good as Tampa Bay's, said, go ask Knobber. And it was whoa, you're the captain. You could also have an answer to that. You're the leader of this team. You've been here for a decade. Why are you guys always so quick to point the finger at the coaching staff? So listen, I don't know Connor McDavid. I've never spoken really to Connor McDavid. I don't know how he truly feels on this, but reading the tea leaves, I don't think it's a totally incorrect and out there thing to say, to go, yeah, he might welcome a coaching change this summer. But I would add, it's all dependent on how these playoffs play out. If they go and they make the Stanley Cup fire, or if they win the Stanley, you're not firing a coach, obviously, if you win the Stanley Cup. If they roll through 2 rounds of the playoffs and then lose in 7 to Colorado in the Western Conference Final, do you need to fire the coach if you just pushed a better team to 7 games and went on another good run?
Well, how do you feel? Like, do you feel that coaching is a part of the problem, or is it, again, just like the personnel?
No, I think coaching is like a part of the problem. I don't think it's, eating more than 50% of the blame pie or anything like that. I think goaltending continues to be an issue for this team, and Stan Bowman did a really, really poor job of handling that midseason, and he panicked, and he deserves a lot of criticism for that. I think the bottom 6 is starting to come together. I think on the blue line, there's just been some guys who've really struggled this year. Jake Wallman doesn't look like the Jake Wallman that we saw during the Cup run. Darnell Nurse was bordering on unplayable for the first 55, 60 games of the season, and you have no choice but to keep playing him because that he's who you got. The Spencer Stastny trade doesn't look like it's working out all that well. He's been healthy scratch for, I want to say, 10 straight games now. So there's a bunch of things that aren't on the coaching staff, but I also think you can look back at the last number of years and okay, why didn't Victor Arvidsson work out? Why didn't Jeff Skinner work out? Especially when a guy like Arvidsson can go and all of a sudden he's back to being same old Victor Arvidsson in Boston. Okay, why didn't a bunch of these things work out? Well, maybe we can point our finger at the coaching staff. Why didn't they adjust a little bit more in their second Cup final against the Panthers? Yeah, we can probably point the finger at the coaching staff here. At times they, totally lose their D-zone structure. It's the reason why Paul Coffey had to be brought back in. Okay, you can point your finger at the coaching staff there. So they're not innocent in the team's struggles and the fact that they're not going to hit 100 points this season and all of that. But I just still don't really view it as the sole reason why the Oilers can't get over the hump.
It's not
one more, actually, Colby. You talk about Bruce Cassidy, you got to go hire Bruce Cassidy, but go watch those last series, man. Chris Knoblauch outcoached Bruce Cassidy in the playoffs. It wasn't even Cassidy couldn't figure out how to adjust to McDavid. Knoblauch seemed to just get his matchups off better. That's one where you can point and go, well, again, Bruce Cassidy's won a cup and all of that. He is a good coach, but how much better of a coach is he than Chris Knoblauch? I don't know.
Well,
I'm not totally sold.
Tyler, maybe that's obviously something that can always be debated, and I don't know Chris Knoblauch as a coach nearly as well as you do. You are looking at the Edmonton Oilers every single night of the guy's coaching career, so I'm not going to pretend. But one thing about Bruce Cassidy that I think is different is when his teams have won or made deep runs, there's a commitment to accountability player to player. And because I think the coach is not afraid to hold the best players accountable more than a lot of coaches are. And again, I know with Connor McDavid, he's always an exception to the rule. You don't need to hold Connor McDavid accountable to anything. He's the exception for that. But I do think where Bruce could maybe do a better job as Knoblauch is making the other players manage the puck. Bruce Cassidy's, his staple is puck management.
Well, they were horrible this year. Vegas.
This year they were, yeah. And listen, like I said, his voice wore off. Yeah. I mean, it does. So, listen, I'm just saying, and I would have said a lot of the similar things about Pete DeBoer, his defensive zone structure and his teams manage the puck, but he hasn't won a Stanley Cup, like Bruce has. So, you know what, Tyler, I never got off the bandwagon this year, and I continue to think, again, this is obviously a playoff team. This is a team that I think wins the first round of the playoffs. I don't think they're losing to a wild card team.
Well, Ingram got hurt last night too, did he not?
Yeah, but so he left after the second period. Jari comes in, and then halfway through the period, Ingram during the TV timeouts kept coming back on the ice and stretching out. So I think it's pretty safe to assume that one was just precautionary, that he felt something and was I'm not going to risk it. The one that's concerning, and I haven't seen an update on the game last night, but I don't know about Jason Dickinson yet, because he went down and couldn't put any weight on one of his legs. I think he got hit in the side of the knee with a puck. That one is concerning.
Yeah. All right, Tyler, listen, thanks for getting up with us today. We appreciate it. You obviously have Daily Faceoff Live here coming up in a little bit, and then, ON every day. You guys are moving through that. Will you have a way to watch the Frozen Four in Edmonton?
No, it's not really carried. I think TSN might carry the finals, and I might be totally out to lunch on that. But I've never honestly hand up, I've never in my life watched the Frozen Four except for a couple of finals that pop up on TSN.
With how many Canadian players there are, and with how much TSN covers hockey, it's kind of crazy to me that they don't they're not interested in saying to ESPN, hey, we'd love Randy Workman is telling us it's on TSN Plus, by the way. But okay, good. So there will be so I know you'll have it on, Tyler, and I know you'll be watching. So we appreciate you, buddy, and we'll talk to you as we make this march towards the playoffs. I mean, geez, it's April 9th. Wow.
Next weekend.
Playoff hockey. Yeah. Wow. It's coming in hot.
I'm excited that it's on TSN. That's news to me. This is going to be great.
Yeah. All right, good.
Thanks,
Ty. All right, Ty.
Yeah. Appreciate it.
Bye, guys.
All right, so we do have one more guest coming on the show today. You're going to go down and get him.
Is he going to stand in between us?
We'll figure it out. Yeah. There's more chairs. Why do you worry about everything?
Well, we're live on the show.
You're like a little old lady. It's stop worrying about everything always.
We're on a live show, and I don't know where he's going to stand.
I'll take care of it like I always do. All right, so you go get him, and I'll talk to the chat and what's on the chat's mind. And I'm just wondering. We had a little bit of a Wi-Fi issue there. It's kind of similar as yesterday, actually. Towards the end of the show, I feel like people around here are starting to wake up and they're starting to get on top of the Wi-Fi. So we are losing it a little bit. So let me come to the chat here, and let me ask you guys, what are you guys excited for with the Frozen Four? Anybody have questions about their prospects? If you're interested in we talked to a lot of the guys yesterday. It sounds like Michael Hage is going to play for Michigan. If you're a Montreal Canadiens fan, I got to watch him practice yesterday, and I know that there were clips on social media of that. He looks a lot better. He looks a lot better, and I don't think he's 100%. He did tell us that he was 100%, Michael Hage, but I don't believe him based on what we kind of know about it. So he's a Montreal Canadiens fan because he'll be at least playing more than 6 or 7 minutes like he did in the regional final. So some Zero DK is asking me what teams are competing. So you've got Michigan playing Denver in the late game, and then you've got North Dakota and Wisconsin in the early game. Winners will obviously play each other in the national championship game on Saturday. So that's the 4 teams that are playing. Interesting too, talking to a lot of the coaches yesterday, and Randy Workman's wanting to know about Cole Reshny. Yeah, listen, Reshny's a centerman for North Dakota. He's a first-round pick. And Randy, I think one of the things you'll appreciate the most is that when you talk to Reshny and you talk to the coaching staff, he is such a humble, low ego guy. Dane Jackson was actually talking a lot about, he's talking a lot about Cole Reshny, and he's talking a lot about Keaton Verhoff, how those guys came in and they're the most humble star first round picks of all time. So You'd like to know when you're drafting a kid in the top 2 or 3, or you get an opportunity to have Cole Reshny, who again, we know this guy can put up points. We know he's a stud. And these are guys that are just super humble guys, hardworking, humble guys. I'm pretty sure Cole Reshny is going back for another year. I don't think he's going to sign. That's what it sounds like. Obviously, that can always change, Randy. I know you're always curious about the prospects from Calgary, but we'll see what happens. But I would expect to see him back in school again. Neil is asking me, will Zach Scholes play? I honestly think it's a game time decision. Talking to Mike Hastings, I would say yesterday, it sounds like it truly is 50-50. He practiced with the team yesterday. Not a ton of contact in the practice yesterday. So I think it's still an option. I would say, if I had to guess, I don't think he will play, but I do think it's 50-50. Zachary82 is asking me anything on Dylan James. So I would expect Dylan James will be in Grand Rapids here whenever the North Dakota, the Fighting Hawks, I always want to call them the Fighting Sioux, when they are finished. I think that's what he told us yesterday, that he does plan to sign with the organization and go to Grand Rapids. Anyways, who else we got here? Anybody else? Let's see. How long until David Carl makes the NHL jump? Is Ralph J 4297? I don't know. After talking yesterday, I don't think David Carl is yearning to be in the NHL as a coach. I really don't. I think he's really content on taking his time and making it work and continuing to coach at Denver. And I think he has a lot of really, really big ideas for college hockey. And I don't think he's in this rush to go coach in the NHL and start moving his family around and doing that whole thing. So I wouldn't say he's never going to go to the NHL, Jeremiah. I don't think that's the case. But, after talking to David yesterday, I think David looks at coaching and he looks at the broader picture. He was talking about how he wants to change all the coaches' titles in college hockey because he feels like they do more than coach, with the recruiting, with the now roster management. Now you have spreadsheets for NIL money. You're basically cap managers now as well, and revenue. You're dealing in revenue share. So he's such a forward thinker, David Carl. I would expect him to continue to be at Denver unless a team that's really good wants to give him some crazy level contract. But I don't see him doing it with his young kids. And, more than ever after talking to him this weekend, it doesn't mean he won't. It doesn't mean he can't. But I just think he really loves where he's at. And I've just been answering questions from the chat here as I'm going to go get a chair for our guest here. Okay, yeah. But that would be my response to David Carl. When's he going to jump? It's not like
he's not making good money.
Yeah.
He's making good money. He's got a I watched all 4 teams practice yesterday, and I said to you, Colby, I said that Denver's practice was far and away the most intense skate of all 4 teams. But, other teams like to keep it loose. Denver was just the most, business-like. And is it a surprise that Frank is on? Can we tell them?
Yeah, we got our old running mate back. Why don't you move over?
Can I give you a hug?
Why don't you move over, Johnny? Why don't you move over a little bit? So we figured we could extend the show a little bit. We had to take this opportunity to get our man Frank Seravalli back on the show. We miss you, pal. It's great to be here in Vegas with you, and maybe you could weigh in on the David Carl question that we just got.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. First off, good to be back. Good to be with you guys. You guys I want to let you know, you're about the only 2 people on the planet that I'd be up in the 6 o'clock hour for in Vegas. No chance I'm getting up for anything else. And absolutely miss being with you guys. To answer your David Carl question, I don't see him leaving. You framed it correctly. I don't want to say never, but as far as I understand, 4 college coaches now are cresting $1 million a year in salary. As that continues to go up and up, what's the incentive to go? You get a long-term deal. Yeah, you get security. I don't know how much more money.
Travel.
Well, every part of it. Even David Carl, he can walk to work. Yeah. It's an epic job. So you have control, you have say, you have security. I think, in fact, as college hockey coaching salaries continue to rise, there's going to be more top-end coaches in the NHL that realize
to come back to college.
I can actually have a way better walk of life by working in college hockey.
I agree, honestly. I do think coaches are going to start to step down. I mean, honestly, I thought we could ask Bruce Boudreau about that the next time we have him in our show, if he'd consider coaching college, because he coaches the junior level. Like he's with the
you really think, Bears, right? And this is not like I'm not trying to like take a shot at him. This is from the age, but do you think at his age he's going to go coach like?
I think he wants to coach. I think he's competitive, and if he doesn't get an NHL job, there's been a couple of openings now that he hasn't gotten. So I don't know, maybe.
Loves to coach. I mean, he does the junior stuff, and like I think this is like one of the dumber things you've said today, which is obviously there's a lot of them, but
that says there's a list.
I mean, Johnny, Bruce Boudreau's going to go coach college.
Were you trying to?
Like,
if he's not getting NHL jobs,
what are you talking about?
Wait, were you trying to jam two male ends of the XLR cords together?
Pretty much. But he's a competitive guy. We talk about it with him every time he's on our show.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So I also want to make note, since Frank is here, because you were kind of around for the early days of this. Johnny sat at dinner 2 nights ago and started the Alexis Lafreniere could score 100 points thing.
I did not.
Frank, did he not
start that? I was there. Yes.
I didn't start that.
And here's the thing. You brought it up, and then you said, "And it's going to happen."
I said that. I did say that.
Wait,
but I didn't bring it up.
Could you imagine him saying, "And it's going to happen"? Like, what evidence? Like, I could at least understand your thought process a couple years ago, saying, "I'm watching the trajectory this kid's on. I think it could happen." To then now having a couple more seasons of evidence and going, "It's still going to happen." Johnny,
his point pace right now, I think post Olympics is like, if it was, I guess, an 82 game progression from Olympics, it'd be like an 86 point pace right now that he's on.
Johnny, in Vegas, when you get a bad hand, this thing called surrender, you should really think about surrendering your chips. Get at least like some of your money back.
No, never.
Frank, any free agents that, these guys that team like Jake Livanovich, we were talking about him a little bit. He's obviously a free agent who's had a pretty good career and a pretty good run at North Dakota. Any idea where him or, some of the other free agents that are kind of kicking around? I mean, TJ Hughes, obviously, like he might win the Hobey Baker tomorrow. And maybe his season ends today, maybe not. Obviously, we'll find out between Denver and Michigan. But do you have any inkling where some of those guys are looking? We asked yesterday, by the way. Like, I asked TJ Hughes, do you know where you're signing? Like straight up. And he was like, I'm just thinking about the Frozen Four. Like, I have
Why
to.
Is he gonna tell you?
Yeah, well, listen, you never know. So I always ask the question when we have the meetings. But he certainly didn't lean on like he's thought about it at all.
Well, look, I understand it's this is the Frozen Four, the pinnacle. Like, anyone thinking about their own situation today is probably going to put their team in a situation where, you're just not on the ball.
Yeah.
So, I'm not surprised. I actually don't. To answer your question, I don't have any insight on where some of these guys are heading. But what I would key you in on is some of the usual suspects who don't have very much prospects in their pipeline, who don't have a ton of picks and are looking to add young talent to their organization that they otherwise wouldn't be able to get their hands on. I mentioned the other day, the Oilers continue to be one of those teams. No shock under Stan Bowman, but they're pursuing a guy playing in the German league right now, Veit Oswald, who's 21, a right winger, 6'1", really good numbers. When you offer as a really good team, that part is attractive to players because, like, hey, I could understand the Colin Graff route where you go, I'm going to pick the Sharks where I want opportunity. I want to jump into the NHL. But a lot of times what happens with those opportunities is you get an 8-game look or a 10-game look. Yeah, and then you never make it back up. And it's just different when you can join an organization that has some playoff aspirations and hope. It just feels different.
Yeah. Frank, one thing I wanted to ask you, and I know Jeremiah mentioned this in the chat earlier, just about Ron Francis stepping down as president of the second, and why now? Like, what is the reasoning for that timing of him doing this, making this decision?
I thought it was a really interesting quote in the press release that they said now was the time for a thoughtful, it was almost like reimagination of the Seattle Kraken front office. Look, Ron Francis is a Hall of Fame human being. He has treated everyone with a ton of respect. He tried to go in there and make things a little bit different from Jump Street with the hires that they made. Treats everyone on his staff really well. But my understanding is that Ron Francis has not really had any say in the hockey ops decisions since Jason Botterill took over. It's almost like Ron Francis, almost a year ago at this time, was sort of put out to pasture, like the guy in waiting, no stress, nothing to do. And I think at some point they wanted to move on, but I'm sure at some point he wants to get his name out there potentially for some of these other openings that exist. So probably one of those mutually beneficial things. And
has Ron Francis done a good job as an organizational leader? I mean, if you look at his track record, I mean, would you assess him? Because is he like a Steve Yzerman where like nobody wants to be critical of him as a manager because he was such a beloved player?
It's
an
expansion team.
But this isn't his first job.
We're talking about
Oh, just in general?
Just in general. Fair. I'm asking. Fitzgerald does too, but I'm just curious, like, I think it's okay to be like, hey, this is a Hall of Fame human, no doubt, and was one of the best players who ever played hockey, right? Whoever played hockey. But should he get another job?
Not in my view. And it's very clear because you go back to the run that he had in Carolina, I believe it was 8 years, and I double check for me how many times the playoffs made in Carolina. I think he might have had 8 misses. Then he comes to Seattle and is given this opportunity to start this from scratch. And
0 for 8.
0 for 8. So, yeah, I thought it was 8 misses. So 8 misses plus 1 playoff round win in Seattle. And I just think unfairly, he was always going to be compared to Vegas because that's the first expansion in this sort of era. And they went to the Cup final in their first year and just have had this. They've taken the league by storm. But the difference between Vegas and Seattle and Carolina under Ron Francis is that one was ultra aggressive and was ultra conservative. And so on the other end of it, he's been way too cautious. Mm-hmm. Just an idea that, hey, we'll build methodically, we'll get there eventually. At some point, and even going back to the players that were available to Seattle in that expansion draft, you left a lot of really good players on the table. And you said, we're going to keep our salary cap space and we're going to do – okay, it's great to have space, but if you can't attract high-quality players, which I think they've found and this entire league has found, how hard it is to find – top 25% players. Like, tell me if you think this is an overgeneral, but I think there's 75% of the league that's kind of the same.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. And I was going to go back to the expansion draft, and I remember it well because you were on the money on it. That was like one of the funniest things ever. Maybe it wasn't funny for you, but it was funny for everybody else. And so I do think they set the franchise on a strange path when they did that. But look, we're having a lot of internet connection issues here, so we're not going to keep peppering Frank. Listen, it was great to have you back on today. Thanks for getting up and doing this with us. It's we always talk about you being one of the reasons we have this show, and so to have you come back on today was awesome. And it's great to get back on the show together. So thanks for coming on this morning, Jonny. I assume you still got to do Bet365.
I do, but we
are having a lot of connection issues. I can see it in the chat. Vic is texting me, so I don't want to keep dragging this along as the internet is kind of flaking out on us here, Jonny. So let's do Bet365, and then we'll tell everybody to watch the Frozen Four, subscribe to the Daily Faceoff YouTube channel, and we'll see them all in a couple of days here on Monday, right?
Yep. So tonight's Morning Cuppa parlay. It's the Thursday parlay, and we're going to do some college hockey. There are a few things more stressful than a close hockey game. One late back check can make all the difference between a chance of playoff glory or an early spring tea time. That's why Bet365, the official partner of the NHL, is offering 3-goal early payout. If the team you're riding goes up 3 goals at any point in the game, they'll pay your bet out early. Hockey fans have enough things to stress about. With 3-goal early payout, now your bets don't have to be one of them. Bet365, download the app today. And tonight we're taking a money line parlay. It's the Vegas parlay. We're taking Michigan and North Dakota on the money line to advance to the national championship game on Saturday night. Going to be great games. I think the matchups actually are kind of perfect for each other. I think Denver are closer together than like Michigan would. Should be 2 really good games tonight. Great atmosphere in Vegas. And I'll kick it back over to you, I guess, Colby, to finish it off. No, I won't. I'll finish it off myself. Okay, Frank, do you want to say any final words or no?
No, good to be back. Good to be back. It's kind of like when you go take a different job, you do something different. It's like a breakup. And you your old friends, you see them on Instagram, you see their shows, and it's always good to reconnect.
Well, thanks, Frank. Thank you.
Friends, Jonny, just so you know.
We hugged the other night. Yes, we did. I stood up and hugged. It happened. But big thank you to Frank, Vic, everyone in the chat. And we'll talk to you Monday after we crown a national champion and a Hobie Baker winner. What's up, everybody? Thanks for tuning in to Morning Cuppa Hockey here on the Daily Faceoff YouTube channel. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. And don't forget, we've got more great hockey content every day. You can catch DFO live at noon and stick around for the sheet with Jeff Marek at 1 p.m. right here on Daily Faceoff. Until then, keep your coffee hot and your takes hotter.